Welcome to Ask the Security Guy. I am your host, Holly Magnuson, and this is YouTube episode number 46. And if you are listening via podcast, this is episode number 16, recorded on September 11th, 2019. And now it is time for me to introduce Sean Corman. Sean is a CISSP, CPT certified, as well as a certified ethical hacker with more than 21 years of cybersecurity experience. Good morning, Sean.
Good morning. How are you, Holly?
That is still a mouthful to say.
Yeah, try earning it.
Yeah, I think I'll pass. So,
It's been a fun career.
Yeah. Couple of reminders as we get started. If you are watching live, be sure on YouTube to change the chat option from the top chat to live chat. You'll see that option there. You'll see top chat. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to just put those in the chat. We love to hear from you and not what you're thinking, what your questions are. If you are listening to this or watching this after the recorded live version and you have a question or comment, you can email those to iso@apu.edu. That's the Information Security Office, iso@apu.edu. So today's topic, Sean, kids and our kids. And I guess the first question I have is, are our kids really at risk for identity theft?
Absolutely. Kids are they're prime targets. So a lot of times when we think about identity theft, we think about the credit card aspect of it, the banking aspect of it. Well, there are other uses for a social security number. It can prove employment. It can prove that you are a U.S. citizen, for instance, that you have a social security number, and it can be used on employment documents and those kinds of things. That becomes very problematic, and we've got a number of use cases where we've seen in the past where children whose identities have been stolen have had their lives later on severely disrupted. We have in our security awareness training that we do on campus, we've talked about one student who lost a very key scholarship because apparently she had an employment record. And her employment record indicated that she was 30-some years old and had been working, for a number of years. More like, realistically, from the time she was a toddler. That took years to sort out. And in that time, she lost access to a very beneficial scholarship for her.
Yeah. How does something like that happen?
Well, there are so many potential venues. If you're following the news at all, though, you'll notice that San Diego had a very significant breach lately, San Diego School District. And it was a very simple, pretty commonplace hack. It was a phishing email where they were harvesting credentials. They used valid credentials then to log into the system and pull the data and download it. So now, and they didn't just get students' information, they also got into the payroll system and were getting employees' records as well. Not all the details have been published yet. There's still an investigation ongoing with that. So as more details unfold, I find it likely that it's just going to be more of the same. Unfortunately, this has become a very common story. We had a data breach, we lost access to these records, so many thousands of people are impacted. If you get a breach letter, you should act on whatever free services are being offered immediately, if not sooner. So I guess one of the big concerns that I have is this has become so common that I worry that people will become, it's same old, and they won't act, and they won't take advantage of the free services, and then they will become a victim. So there are things that you can do for your kids too that will protect their credit, and those are there. Unfortunately, there are very few proactive things that you can do. The credit bureaus, all three credit bureaus, have a mechanism by which you can freeze a child's credit before they even have a credit file. So according to the three credit bureaus, they don't establish a credit file for someone until they're 16 years old. So what you can do is they each have a mechanism, and I just took a brief look at it last night. It still looks like it's paper-based, where you send in certain types of personally identifiable information about your child. If they're pre-16, then they create and lock down a credit file for your kid. So that is a proactive step that you can take. But your information exists in all kinds of places that you can't necessarily control. So, for instance, the school district has all that pertinent information. They have even health information about your kid. Well, there's evidence that that was lost in this breach. Not just identifiable information, but PHI, health information. So things like food allergies and those kinds of things that a school district would have valid reason to have. Mm-hmm. So how do you protect it when the organization is authorized to have it in the first place? So a couple things you can do there. From a school perspective, be involved with your school district. Talk to the board. Go to board meetings. Raise cybersecurity as a question. Basically keep asking the school board, what are you doing to protect our child's information? This is not just about their physical security, which is a huge concern by itself.
Right.
Now we're also dealing with their their identity and the security of their electronic records. And schools have historically been so focused on physical security of the campus. And in this age of active shooters and school shootings, those are extremely valid concerns. However, that does not negate the idea that electronic security is equally important. Because, the disruption or the potential disruption to a child's life later on can be dramatic. Health services could be denied, employment opportunities could be lost, scholarships could be lost, educational opportunities could be lost. Now none of those are as dramatic as losing their life, obviously, but they are still significant and need to be treated as such.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think in one of the on-campus classes we did, one of the students found out they had a mortgage.
Yeah.
And, it wasn't his mortgage, but so at some point his social security number was compromised and, not verified by the lender. And yeah.
So that was a newsflash for him. And there's a security guy out there who does some work similar to us, but he's had his identity compromised numerous times. I've had mine compromised twice now. Mm-hmm. Now, they were obviously not through means that I control.
Right.
They were organizations that have my information legitimately and lost it. So it creates a real problem.
And, gives us that reminder that we should be actively looking at our own credit and our own information as well as our kids.
Right. So there are free tools out there. There's Credit Karma, for instance. Mm-hmm. Will give you kind of that high level view of your credit report. I think they only look at maybe one or two bureaus. But if you see all of a sudden there's a weird change in your credit score, it's mm-hmm. worth looking at. They also have notifications, and they have I think a premium service as well. But most banks, your credit card companies now offer mm-hmm. your FICO score, and they all have fraud alerting. Mm-hmm. So if you suspect that your identity has been compromised as part of a breach or something like that, you can call your bank and you can call your credit card companies and you can put a fraud alert on your account for 90 days or longer. And different organizations handle that different ways. But at the end of the day, if they see you buying stuff here in California But all of a sudden you bought dinner in Atlanta, someone's they're gonna deny that charge. I use a lot of those security controls proactively with my financial institutions, and I have forgotten to notify them when I'm traveling,
Yeah.
and had probably all of my cards locked as soon as I landed in another state because I went to buy a drink,
Yeah.
a iced tea at a little road stop, and just that $2 charge was enough to flag it, and it rippled through. One institution notified the other, and next thing I know, none of my cards worked.
Always fun. Well, and another question I have about security in our kids is when the doctor's office asks for a social security number, what do we tell them?
So it depends on your insurance carrier. Most insurance carriers have a group ID or other identifier that is different from your social security number. And all you have to do is provide that group ID number or insurance ID number, and that is sufficient. If they are asking for your social and are persistent about it, you have every right and should dig into why and question them and challenge them. So, why would they be interested in doing that in the first place? Why do they need your stuff?
Mm-hmm.
So, now I have actually run into a situation where there's an insurance carrier that uses your SSN as the ID number. And it's the SSN of the person carrying the policy.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not even my SSN. It's somebody else's. And I have to have it to use it. So that's a weird setup, right? So those do happen and they do exist. And you obviously want to limit that as much as possible. And if you find yourself in a situation where you have to use someone else's social security number or your own because that's the only identifier your insurance company uses, just take extra steps to protect your identity. Use the fraud alerts, use the credit freezes, proactively take steps to protect your stuff. Because you're putting yourself out there more than you normally would.
Yeah.
If you look at there's an app that we've mentioned in the show notes. It's basically a smartphone app that has a lot of good quizzes, good tools in it, good advice. I've gone through it and looked at it. It's actually really, really cool. But one of the things they talk about is only carry the IDs in your wallet or purse that are relevant for what you're doing that day.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's good advice. A lot of us carry everything because we never know what we're going to need or when we're going to need it.
Yeah.
So it requires a little forethought and planning. But it's a good practice. Another thing, are you having your mail delivered to a place that is secure or not? So I'll give you an example. My wife and I use a PO box, even though we have, obviously live in a residence.
Mm-hmm.
But the residence where we live, the street that we live on, has a significant problem with mail theft. And if you don't check your mail, same day, every day, before it's dark, there's a possibility that they'll swoop through in the night, and because we'll walk our dog and find every mailbox on the street hanging open in the morning.
Craziness, sadness.
So it's a real thing.
Yeah. In the app you were referring to, is that the identity theft help app?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I was checking that out, and that looks kind of cool.
It's pretty good. It's pretty good.
We're pretty much at time.
Hmm?
Any final? If you've got any questions, this is your chance to ask those questions. Any other thoughts, Sean, on how we can protect our kids? Because they don't have a bank account. Like for us, we check our bank account, check our credit card statements. Anything other that we can do proactively?
Really, probably the single best proactive step you can take is follow the instructions with the 3 credit bureaus for putting a freeze on their credit if they are younger than 16 years. If they are older than 16 years, there's a different process. You can still do it. They're still minors.
Yeah.
As parents, take ownership of your kids' IDs.
Yeah, and
Don't
I
let
did
them
that
carry
with.
their don't let them carry their socials. Make sure they're locked in a safe place in your home. I recommend fireproof safes myself. I actually use them too, so I'm not recommending something I don't already do. But again, it's take those proactive steps wherever you can, and ask questions.
Yeah,
always
question.
ask questions.
And speaking of
Daycare,
questions,
dentist office, doctor's office, all of those places have a tendency to ask for information they don't necessarily need.
right. And speaking of questions, we have one, and let's see if I can figure out how to show it on the screen. This is really one of the cool features.
Okay.
So programs like LifeLock are not needed since all the security alerts on our credit cards.
So LifeLock actually is a good tool. I use it because I've had my identity stolen. They provide just an additional layer of monitoring and protection. They're pretty cost effective, and there's a number of tools like LifeLock out there. So what they all claim to monitor the dark web, which is the media's representation of parts of the internet where criminals reside. And they do to varying degrees. They use the same tools that I use when we verify every year what the value of a stolen identity is. So for our audience who hasn't been to one of our trainings, part of what we talk about in our training is what is the value of a stolen identity? How much is your ID worth if it was stolen? And the price changes. It's a free market in the black market. So there's oddly there's no regulation there. So it's truly supply and demand.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the demand or the supply has been extremely high the last few years.
It has, and it's actually driven the cost down of an individual identity significantly. It's under $20.
Yeah, it's really cheap to be somebody new.
Yeah.
And I believe like AAA, Sam's Club, Costco, some of those, they offer their members LifeLock at a reduced, if not free cost.
Correct. So in LifeLock, LifeLock has a number of good program tiers. They're all valuable.
Yeah. So we have another question. Let's see if I can get that on the screen from Tony regarding mail. You can get a daily email from the U.S. Postal Service showing exactly what mail you're receiving that day.
Yes.
The informed delivery. I love this service. I'm so glad you mentioned it, Tony. In fact, I'm getting a package today.
Yep. And in addition to that, places like Amazon and a few others now will send you pictures to your email or even to a text message of the package being delivered at your home.
Yes.
So you can see exactly where at your house that they dropped the package. So Tony, thank you for mentioning that. I completely forgot about that too.
That's a great service. So thank you for those questions and comments. Next month will be our pre-recorded show, unless there's some major incident that comes up, and then we will be live in color. At this point, our plan is we'll be live again in January. But again, if things happen that our community needs to know about, we're going to let you know ASAP. So again, if you have questions after the fact, you can email us at iso@apu.edu. Check out the podcasting option. Share this with a friend. Subscribe. When you subscribe, you get to the YouTube channel. You'll know when we go live. You'll get an email if you click the little bell and all that good stuff. So I think with that, Sean, we can say goodbye.
Yeah, I think we're good.
And as I tell all new employees, don't give away your username and password, please. Have a great day.
Have a great one.